Hey nerds, we are going to review the latest episode of X-Men 97, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
I am David.
And I'm Paula.
We are now at episode 9 of X-Men 97. The latest title is Tolerance is Extinction Part 2. And the spoiler-free logline is that the X-Men work to settle the score before it's too late. So these spoiler-free loglines get shorter and shorter as we get closer to the end of the season. David, what are your thoughts about the latest episode of X-Men 97?
I enjoyed it, but at the same time, it's a small letdown for me. This is the middle between the three-part conclusion of the season finale. So it makes you want to think, oh, come on, can we just see the finale already? But there's a lot happened right there, and I feel like everything's all jumbled together. It makes me think about, wait, well, how this happened? How did we get this fast? But I'm really anxious to see what happens in the finale. I got some theories of what could happen.
Okay. Paula, what were your thoughts about the latest episode?
I was a bit disappointed. I liked it. It's another piece of the puzzle. But just like David, I thought it was rushed. Just a lot of things going on too fast for me. Or I guess a lot of changes too fast for me. Yeah, and I'm just eager to watch the next one.
Yeah, for me, I think definitely there was scenes in which I had to rewatch it again. And social media exploded because of certain scenes that we'll get into. I think that it sparked a lot of debate as to what's going to happen here and there. And also people flexing here and there about, oh, I know this from this part. I know it from there, and I know it from there. So it was very interesting to see all those different machinations that happen online whenever an episode like this comes out. I think that it definitely does bring out a lot of the shock value because we went through episode 5 and it was really shocking. This is just as shocking as episode 5 in a lot of ways. And also, we heard from Bo DeMeo, the head writer of X-Men 97, that there were going to be more shocks toward the end of the season. This was definitely one of them, and I'm very interested to see what is in store for the season finale, and hopefully we can also get into what we may expect to happen in season 2, because I think it's close to being done, so they're probably going to release it next year or something like that, because they did it back to back, and they were explaining how they might do seasons 3 and 4 back to back to take advantage of this momentum that they've created with X-Men. So having said all that, David, what is your rating for episode 9?
I would give it a 7 at dinner party.
Okay, all right. And Paula, what was your rating?
I would give it a 7 as well.
Okay, all right. For me, I think that the shock of it was very big, but I think that it's not as shocking as it was when you first experienced episode 5. I think that's still, for me, a 10. The shock value of it, and also, like the both of you said, the rushed nature of the episode, I think that I will still give it an 8 road trip, because it's still pretty shocking when I first saw it, and then the cliffhanger ending. And once I saw it the second time, I was like, okay, that's all right. And then I see it online, I'm like, okay, it's too much now. That's where I stand on this episode. Any other thoughts before we get into spoiler territory?
Let's dive in.
Okay. If you like our conversation about X-Men 97 and other content, please share and subscribe for more. And helps us out a lot. And we want to grow our channel. Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead. There we go. Okay. So we start off the episode with Xavier getting out of bed. And this is coming from last episode where Magneto had already sent his EMP onto the Earth, disabling all the Sentinels. And we see here Bastion with his mother going to their house, and basically he is of course very sad that his mother's disabled now because of the EMP. And we also see here the drawing that he did as a child of this dystopian Earth with Sentinels involved, and he quoted to say, "Everything's all quiet now, mother." And I thought that was very disturbing. And we saw from the last episode how disturbed this particular individual was. And we find out later on that Xavier did try to recruit him to be a part of his school, not just the X-Men, but of his school. But his mother turned him down and basically shut the door on him and said, no, we don't want to be outcasted in any sort of way. Then we get to see Jubilee and Roberto escape from the clutches of the mutant collars and with Friends of Humanity, which made an appearance, and Storm and Forge come to their rescue. And of course, Jubilee's very happy the fact that Storm is back, and we get to see again more of their budding relationship. There was a misdirect online where people thought that Storm will get together with a Wolverine. That was already established in another universe and in the comics, but it seems as though they're going to move forward with this relationship, which I said at the time was very awkward. And then we see here again the soap opera between not just Jean and Cyclops, but with the teacher and the pupil, and how he justified why did he give Magneto the school, and Cyclops feeling that, hey, what's going on here? I thought you trusted me. And so there was definitely this father and son tension between the two, and Xavier's justification I found pretty hollow in a lot of ways. And I think that as an educator myself, it's very flawed into thinking, oh, this is going to be this way or this is going to be that way, because they are still their own minds. And I think that Rogue really brought it home for Xavier to say, look, you treat us as like our students, but not as human beings. David, you want to say something?
Yeah, because Scott is still upset and very confused of why, of all people, Xavier left the mansion and the school to Magneto and not to Scott himself, or even ask him at least, especially from all the experience they've done together. And Xavier says that this is not what I want you to be, because as he said, that both he and Jean accomplished everything they asked for since they're teenagers and they graduated. And he said, you should have been gone and enjoyed the world out there. But Scott says, that was my choice to make, not yours. And as you said earlier, that when Xavier spoke with Rogue about Gambit, that he thought Gambit might bury here, but Rogue pointed out, if you see us as people, not as students, you would know how they really think or how they would really feel about it, and not to mention the choices they were given, not the choices that they were just literally that Xavier planned for them without even discussing with them about it. So that's what it caused a rift. And then Xavier sees that the fault he made was a big mistake, because he thought that Magneto would change for the better, but it turns out it got worse. So
yeah, but he did change
for temporarily.
Well, until something caused him to revert to believing that he was right all along. I actually do not fault Magneto for that.
No.
He did.
No.
He did try, and unfortunately, the whole dream came crashing down. So that's expected. And I think it was really naive of the professor to think that Scott and Jean could just go out and live a like happy life in this world where mutants are still not being treated well. Like, what was he expecting from that life?
Yeah, definitely.
So, which makes me think: do you believe in your dream, Professor? Do you actually believe that you can bring peace between mutants and humans?
Yeah, and I think that it's very interesting to see his flaws. Whereas I think in the past series, we saw some blind spots here and there, but it was very easy for someone like me as a 12-year-old to understand, oh yeah, there's Xavier's blind spots. But now it's much more sophisticated in a lot of ways. These very deep questions about family, relationships, teacher-student relationship. So I find it very fascinating. We get to see here some of the old school uniforms. This was part of the preview where they are going to Muir Island. They are separating into two teams. One team, blue, which is going to go to Avalon to stop Magneto, and then the other team, gold, which is going to stop Bastion and his Sentinels. And then before the mission, we get to see Magneto comes down to Xavier's mansion and finds out that this tug of war between the two, as you mentioned, Paula, tension that's there. And yeah, there's a lot of things that he said that were correct. And so he was able to convince Roberto and Rogue to join him because, frankly, Rogue has had it rough during this first season because she saw Gambit die. Then she sees Magneto almost dying. And Roberto's had it rough, where his family has outcasted him. He's trying to fit in. He doesn't really know Xavier, and he had that little dig on Xavier before this all happened, so he doesn't know where he's at. And you get to see this switching of sides, and of course, he then mentioned that offer still is open for anyone who wants to join. But to me, I don't think that any of them would want to join him. But what are your thoughts as to whether or not other people might want to join Magneto here? Any?
I get why Rogue joined Magneto because she lost everything, and she's still wicked mad at Xavier
Mhm.
for what happened because he disappeared, that they can't guide him, and Gambit was like the last straw. Especially that he's really mad at Xavier that he was alive the whole time and he didn't really do anything to help with preventing Genosha and possibly prevent Gambit's death.
Mhm.
But Rogue, I did say that I made a choice to lead the mutant kind to a new
Right.
age. Despite that her love for the team, which is her family, it's just that she can't deal with it anymore because
Mhm.
of the heavy loss she had
Right.
bared. While Roberto, he was casted out, he was used as a scapegoat by his own family. So
Mhm.
now he doesn't know where he belongs anymore
Right.
right now.
Definitely. And then we see on Muir Island a lot of the old school uniforms. If anyone ever saw the old Pride of the X-Men, this is what it looked like. It's a pretty good callback to that era of X-Men characters. Then we get to see this discussion between President Kelly and Xavier about the Magneto protocols. And I was curious as to what that was. David, I know that you have a little bit more background on that, so can you shed some light about what are the Magneto protocols?
To give the viewers a little backstory, this episode is loosely based on the 1993 X-Men issue Fatal Attractions,
Mm-hmm.
where at the time Magneto did turn good, but he reverted back to his evil ways and caused the massive planet EMP wave.
Mm-hmm.
And then President Kelly mentioned of the Magneto protocols, which was made before when Magneto was first evil. And then the Magneto protocol is basically a defense system that is connected by the United States, the UN, and SHIELD against Magneto's magnetic powers
Mm-hmm.
that would either subdue it or fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a defense
Right.
whenever he makes that same attack again, like the EMP we saw earlier.
Right. And so this is the way in which Xavier is trying to convince the president not to intervene and to let the X-Men do their job and to try to stop Magneto from causing more damage. And he was able to hold him off, but we'll see what happens and when there's other things that might happen later on. This is a picture of Bastion defending his base from the gold team. So the gold team is tasked to try to neutralize his powers temporarily. It was very interesting that it was not going to be a permanent neutralization. This is where Storm basically told Beast and Ford not to go that extreme. And there was because it was like a collar device that they were trying to again limit his power so that he won't have control over his Sentinel army. We see also appearance of the Hulk. So more changed to Juggernaut, then he changed to the Hulk. So now we know that the Hulk does exist in this X-Men universe. It's very interesting that he said morph smash. Then we see Jean and Mr. Sinister. And this reminds me of the fight between Cyclops and Mr. Sinister. This was, I think, back in season two. I think it was season two
Yeah, it
of
was
the
it
original
too. Yeah.
series. And so this is a good dichotomy between that one and this one. Very different powers is being used, and you can tell that Jean really have a lot of the telekinetic powers, throwing bowling balls at him. Sinister being very evil, trying to manipulate her mind, and her being, nope, you're not going to play around with me anymore. Then it switches back to Asteroid M or Avalon, where this is a good scene between Jubilee and Roberto to cancel out their own powers. It reminded me of Civil War with Natasha and Clint. But it was definitely much more harder feelings because I think Jubilee got pretty much scorned by Roberto when they obviously had a budding relationship, and he's nope, I'm gonna go this way, and she's like, what? You're just gonna leave me here? It's a bad move in a lot of ways. Paula, you were like, oh, what's going on? You have any thoughts on that, Paula?
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
All right.
not on that part.
It's like typical of men, right?
Yeah, it was. I guess as I've gotten older, I can understand the side of the villains. All right, so I'm not good, bad, black and
Right,
white.
right. Exactly.
So I get it. I
Yeah.
get him. He was rejected by his mom, who actually sold him out. So
Yes, yes, she did. She did.
yeah.
That mom is really evil. That's damn. But again, in real life, there are people that are like that. That outcast
Unfortunately,
their
yeah.
family members, their siblings, their offspring. It's very sad. Um, and then you see here that Xavier basically says try to remove Magneto's helmet to Cyclops. And I found this to be very weird because Cyclops stopped the attack initially between Xavier and Magneto. And I thought it was a Star-Lord moment from Infinity War where Star-Lord was basically distracted by love. And it reminded me because Cyclops was pretty much distracted by love and making the choice to stop that. And whether or not Cyclops turns bad here, we don't know. I think that he made a conscious choice to try to save Jean, but it's weird as to how he was doing it. And then we see here Jean communicating psychically with Scott and basically saying, I love you. And we don't know what happens. Does she die?
That was a
Paula?
farewell.
Okay.
We don't know because we always seen is that we saw Sinister still has control of Nathan, even though he's
Mm-hmm.
older, and then fight against Jean. And even he cannot control himself right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, please don't tell her she died. I don't think she died because she still has the power of the Phoenix sleeping in her. Because we don't know what's going to happen next. So
Yeah.
we
Also, they did in the intro show the Phoenix and show Lalandra. So I don't know if that's going to be episode 10 or if that's just an updated intro of the original series. Who knows? Um, we get to see Wolverine versus Magneto. Those of you that were complaining about how Wolverine has been downplayed here, Wolverine gets his moment, and it's pretty glorious. And you can see that there was a tension that was building from the beginning of the episode toward the end here. We also see the psychic attack once the helmet was removed, and then because Cyclops stopped the attack, then Magneto was able to regain control, and then put the helmet onto Xavier, crushing his head. And so there's definitely this extreme side. And he also said to Xavier, shut up. You talk too much. And yes, he did talk too much. And this brings up the point that you made, Paula, about how the villain's right. I saw something online where they said that when we were younger, when we watch X-Men, we're like, oh, we can sympathize with Xavier and his plight and more peaceful world. But now it's like, with the stuff that's going on in real world today and also with this, man, he is right. I'm sorry. He is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they always find themselves there. You know the scene when Xavier talks to President Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
I actually rolled my eyes at that
Mm.
because I was like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
Now we have to let the humans know that they need the X-Men and the X-Men are going to save them. Are going to save the world. It's the same thing. So I am inclined to lean more towards Magneto,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then, of course, destroying the whole world, then where are all the mutants going to live? That's a bit extreme
Yeah.
as well.
To,
What I want to know is why is it that it's always Wolverine fighting Magneto? Always. He should be the last person to fight Magneto,
that is true. And so
considering that he's all metal.
that is true. We get to see this gore that's here. David, you mentioned about this where Xavier's head is about to be crushed, and so we see these three claws we know as Wolverine that stabs Magneto in the chest. It's not a fatal wound, But yeah, this looked pretty gory, and this was very Japanese anime though. And to tell you the truth, lots of that happening here. And before the end, we see that Wolverine said, "This is not my first war," and that the brave always die first, which was pretty cool. Again, good Wolverine scene. And then we get to the very, very end, which is ripped from the comics. Thank you, David, for pointing this out to me. This has been all online, people researching it, and it speaks for itself. And it's, again, very shocking ending to.
As I mentioned before to all the viewers here, Wolverine does not die. As I said before, this episode is loosely based on the 1993 X-Men story arc Fatal Attractions. Wolverine did survive, but there's a price because we get to see more about Wolverine actually, of his true mutation actually,
Right.
and because in the comic book it explained to him why he was given the adamantium skeleton in the first place, and then but now the adamantium metal is out, we get to see Wolverine evolve in a way. He'll be a little more feral, basically. So, which we'll find out what happens in the next episode. But it's an iconic scene, literally reimagined from the 1993 story arc. So, I have some theories of where the story might go, but we don't know because X-Men from the original series and this one is loosely based on the stories we've seen now. But we have to wait until the finale to see where it goes and how it ended. Because as we all said, season 2 is already in production, so we don't know what story's gonna go cover.
Exactly. And so there's definitely a lot of speculation online and where it might go. And this was right up there in terms of shock value with episode 5, but episode 5 definitely hit harder than this one because they all spoiled it online, but you didn't know what was going to happen in episode 5. And then there was some finality to it. But yeah, it definitely great theater and great drama overall. Any final thoughts before we wrap up about this episode? No? Okay. I think that scene pretty much stopped us from talking, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm ready for the next one. I'm ready for it.
Okay, all right then.
But I don't say with one thought though. We see Forge back to his X Factor costume. But it still didn't explain the fact, was he kicked out as the leader of X Factor? Or he just left on his own? Because we saw most of the X Factor team in Genosha, minus we still not seen Havoc yet. So, which I'm hoping he'll show up, maybe, but we'll see. But
yeah, all right. Paula, do you have any other final thoughts?
No.
Okay, all right. That is our review of X-Men 97, episode 9. Please tell us what you think about the episode. Like, share, and subscribe for more content like this, and we will see you in the next one. All right, take care.